Hey, how's it going? X-Men 97 Season 1 has finally come to an end, and I just wanted to give my quick thoughts on it. Now, I just have to say I love this show, and I love the premise. Right after the original show from the 90s, except it features the X-Men dealing with the aftermath of Professor X being assassinated, and him leaving Magneto to lead the X-Men as per his will. This doesn't go over really well with the team, nor the rest of the world, and now the X-Men not only have to deal with their arch nemesis being the leader of their team, but the usual X-Men mumbo jumbo, like anti-mutant politicians and terrorists, mutant killing robots, time travel, and the whole 9 yards. Off the bat, I really just have to say I really enjoyed how this show presented all of its characters, especially the X-Men. Listen, I enjoyed some of the X-Men movies, but the way they treat some of my favorite mutants, and honestly majority of the X-Men, was just disrespectful, and when you think about it, ultimately ruined the reputation for Cyclops in the mainstream for like ever. And if you're a Cyclops and Nightcrawler fan, let me just say, we eatin' boys. Everyone gets not only something cool to do, but a ton of development, some great dialogue moments, or something just hilarious or even endearing. There's always something for these characters to do. No bit of dialogue feels like a waste of time. It's all meant to develop these characters further in poignant and meaningful ways. It also seems like this show is taking major moments and storylines from the comics and pasting them together to fit in the world that they've been crafting, and I appreciated it because it feels like the moments that they've taken from the comics, the storylines that they've taken, are all meaningful. They're not just there for the sake of Easter eggs or anything like that to just have the audience point and go, hey, that's from the comics. Storm losing her powers and eventually getting her mojo back with Forge was a really good offshoot storyline that gave Storm a ton of focus, which I really appreciated. Magneto attempting to accept his role as the leader of the X-Men and also a diplomat representative for all of mutant kind was hella intriguing and probably my favorite storyline in this entire season, if I'm being quite honest. We also have Rogue going rogue after the tragedy that happened on Genosha that she experienced, and even Jean's identity crisis when it came to dealing with the clone Madeline Pryor, and the whole Cable Nathan Summers subplot was also handled really well. The melodrama in X-Men stories are something that should always be a constant. In my opinion, they're some of the best, most iconic parts of any X-Men storyline, and here it's no different. We have a Magneto, Gambit, and Rogue love triangle that was compelling as fuck and is honestly the emotional center of the best episode in the season, in my opinion. And the Jean, Logan, Scott love triangle, which I'm kind of sick of, is handled in a real complex way and isn't just black and white or as childish as it's been presented, especially in the mainstream or in the movies. It doesn't cuck Scott is essentially what I'm getting at there. The animation itself is also really cool. I love how stylized and unique it is. It's also very vibrant and colorful. All of the characters stand out and look unique, and I know a lot of it is translated from the original show in the 90s, but it's updated in its own unique way, but still keeps the vibe and feel from that original show at the same time. It's a very unique situation there. At first, I thought the animation was a bit choppy and the frames were lacking, but as the show continued, the animation quality ramps up and eventually we get some great shots. It almost reaches a point where every single frame in an episode could be a wallpaper. The action in the show is brutal, tense, and also very cool. Cyclops and a couple of the other characters get to show their stuff in which they haven't been able to show their powers in any mainstream media, and I thought that was super cool. And honestly, the fight scenes are truly where the animation thrives. I can only imagine how much better the show is going to look for the second season, considering how successful the first was. The tone of the show is very mature, but it honestly doesn't come across that way at first. The darker tone ramps up with each episode with things like body horror and sexual references and blood and political commentary that's much more nuanced than anything that Marvel has done in years.
You've got to do better, Senator.
And I have to give a ton of credit where credit's due. The music in this show is great, especially in episode 5. Now, I have to get into the issues. This season was not perfect. One of the biggest issues I had was the pacing at first. I felt like the first couple episodes, I think episode 2 and episode 3 are really well done, but episode 1 and 4 just felt like filler, and honestly, those episodes made the show almost feel like a generic superhero cartoon. But as the season progresses, it feels much more serialized and connected, rewards the viewer for paying attention and tuning in week after week. The dialogue is also cringe and I just have to say it, completely bad at certain points. I think Cyclops and Jean have some of the worst dialogue in the show. They just sound very wooden, whereas majority of the other characters don't really sound that way. I think Logan's voice actor does a great job. Magneto, even Rogue and Gambit, even though they sound a little bit cliche, there's much more character to those performances than, say, the performances of Jean, Scott, and even Beast. Other characters, however, have some great dialogue that's very poignant and meaningful. I think Magneto and Nightcrawler especially have some great dialogues and monologues. There's one in particular from Nightcrawler that he shares a scene with Rogue in episode 6 that just absolutely ruined me.
And her confusion is only natural, but she did not cause Gambit or Magneto to be killed. She helped them live.
I also just have to say this, the time travel stuff in this show, the time travel in anything usually bothers me or puts me off or leaves me annoyed, but here, I was okay with it considering how good everything else was, but in all honesty, with the introduction of various other subplots that happened in the middle of the season, the time travel was probably on the lowest of the totem pole for me when it came to all the subplots and storylines that I cared about. Now, I liked Bastion as a villain. Hell, I liked all the villains in the show. I thought Mr. Sinister was really cool. But with Bastion, the time travel stuff just felt like it was almost an afterthought in its explanation. But like I said, I'm so used to that with time travel stuff, I'm willing to forgive it considering how much I enjoyed everything else. Probably the smallest issue I have was just the overall connection this show has to the greater Marvel universe. If you ever seen the original show in the 90s, you would know that it was connected to the other Marvel shows that were happening concurrently or a little bit before or a little bit after. And here there are some appearances of various mutants, Avengers, Defenders, villains, and supporting characters that all show up, but I would say in the second half of the season it starts to feel a bit gratuitous. Felt like a bunch of characters were there for like fan servicey reaction shots. Maybe we'll get something like a Civil War storyline or even an Avengers versus X-Men storyline eventually. It really seems like they were hinting or alluding at that. If not for season 2, maybe for season 3. And overall, that's pretty much it. I really enjoyed this show, despite some flaws here and there. I think everything else this show does is so good that it doesn't even matter. This is honestly one of my favorite things Marvel has done in years, outside of maybe Guardians and No Way Home. I haven't really been a huge fan of the Marvel stuff post Endgame, but here I was super excited to watch every single episode week by week. It really just felt like I was a kid again watching a Saturday morning cartoon, but it was matured enough in a way where I never felt like it was just too corny or campy or too childish. A lot of what they talk about here is super heavy, and it really just carries the torch of some of the best X-Men storylines and comics and movies that I've seen in a meaningful way, with allegories of race and sexuality. I really hope Marvel takes some lessons here when it comes to representation of minorities and women and people with various identities. I would prefer, if you're going to do those characters, if you're going to make those movies with those races and those identities, have it be meaningful, have it be well written, well acted, and well animated, and well choreographed, as opposed to just coasting on the idea of it being a minority-led project. If you go for it all the way, the people will spend money, the people will pay attention, and the people will react in a positive manner. That's it. I'll see y'all in another video. Like, share, comment, subscribe. Links in description to my social medias, as well as my other channels. My gaming channel, Ghost Mikey Gaming, and my reaction channel, Ghost Mikey Reactions, are all in the description down below. And I will see y'all in the next video. Bye bye.